Hey there, I'm Mr. Terry, a high school history teacher. Welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video. All right, today, you guys, I'm going to be checking out another conspiratorial related subject, and that is that the Earth is flat. I want to try to learn and also react and comment and potentially teach about some of the history related things behind some of these more conspiratorial type of subjects. So I'm really interested in learning about, I guess, the flat earth conspiracy. What is it about? Is this like a real thing? What do they believe? And I'm really just interested to check this out. So the video I'm going to check out today, I was trying to look for videos that hopefully have to do with like the history of it, is from Simon Whistler, a great YouTuber that does a lot of history content and other content. So if you like this and you want to see me react and comment again on these type of things, let me know what kind of stuff you think I should be checking out, especially when it's related to history, and let me know down in the comments. Now down there as well, you're going to see the original video. Make sure you're liking that. And again, if you want to check out more of this kind of stuff, definitely subscribe to my channel and I will oblige. All right, let's get started. All right, let's see if this is a real thing, that there are people in 2023 that believe the Earth is flat. Where are they getting these ideas from? Let's check this out, and hopefully I can add to it. Today I found out. Fun channel, by the way. Definitely.
So contrary to popular belief, a decent percentage of the human population has known definitively the Earth was roughly spherical for over 2,000 years.
That is true. Just to add some history there, one of the earliest experiments to test the spherical nature or of the Earth was done actually in ancient Greece by a mathematician scientist named Eratosthenes out of Alexandria. And he, not to go into too much detail of the actual experiment, because you can check this out through some measurements of distance as well as measuring angles of the sun, was able to kind of conclude that the Earth was indeed spherical, and because of that was actually able to, within pretty good estimates, actually calculate the circumference on the Earth. And this like test that he's done, people have done it a lot. They've done it a lot, and you can like recreate it if you have, you know, the right things available to you, because it can be very difficult. But yeah, look into it. But yeah, and yes, generally people did believe the Earth was round, and it does depend on your the culture and stuff like that. For example, there was that myth that Columbus was trying to like prove the Earth was round because people thought it was flat. Not the case at all. The Columbus thing was, he thought the Earth was a lot smaller than people thought, not that the Earth was round when people thought it was flat. All right, bees.
This is hardly impressive, as we noted in our Brain Food Show podcast, which you should also check out. Bees also used this fact in their own absurdly fascinating navigation and in communicating directions to other bees.
I did not know that. How?
As for humans, we took a little longer to realize this, with Pythagoras from the 6th century BC, generally credited with being the first known person to have suggested a spherical Earth, though the idea didn't exactly catch on at that point.
Because there wasn't the studies yet. I mean, it was like proposed and stuff like that, but hopefully it gets to
Aristotle, 4th century BC, agreed and supported the hypothesis with observations such as that the southern constellations rise higher in the sky when a person travels south. He also noted that during a lunar eclipse, the Earth's shadow is round.
You know, you might have also seen more, or maybe even an earlier belief of the spherical Earth, if maybe there had been more connection between northern and southern hemisphere people, especially when it comes to star charts and stuff, because the skies look different in the north versus the southern hemisphere because, again, of the shape of the Earth, move in a different direction. There's different constellations and stuff like that. But since by far, what is it, 90% of the Earth lives above the equator, maybe that slows it down.
Much more definitively, the 3rd century BC head librarian of the Library of Alexandria, Eratosthenes, built on their ideas and managed to calculate the circumference
I'm telling you, it's effing round
of the Earth with remarkable accuracy. How? Well, he simply used the knowledge that at noon on the summer solstice there was a well in Syene where the sun shone directly down to the bottom with no shadow. Thus, at noon on summer solstice, he used a rod to measure the angle of the shadow made in Alexandria and found it to be about 7 degrees, or about 1/50th of a circle. With this information, he now just needed to know the
again, you can do this experiment or something. you can do it, but the hardest part is you need a long distance, because you're in a lot of ways you're making a triangle, and to make the longest, line of a triangle, or to make this as accurate as possible, you need to make that really long. So you have to have a really accurate distance of potentially like hundreds of miles or something like that. And that's where you'd have to, find a place that especially is as flat as possible. From what I understand.
Exact distance between Syene and Alexandria to get the circumference of the Earth, about 50 times the distance between Syene and Alexandria. He hired a survey crew known as Bemetists to measure the distance, which they found to be about 5,000 stadia.
If I remember right, the dude had to walk from like the Alexandria to the Syene place. Like, I don't know how many steps that would be, but it's like many, many, many miles. That would be the hardest thing to do.
He then concluded that the Earth must be about 250,000 stadia around. Depending on which stadion measurement he was using, his figure was either 1% too small or 16% too large. Many scholars think it likely he was using the Egyptian stadion, 157.5 meters, being in Egypt at the time, which would make his estimate roughly 1% too small. All right, so moving on to the so-called Dark Ages, in which Christianity supposedly squashed such outlandish ideas as a spherical Earth, the truth is exactly the opposite. In Christian medieval Europe, 7th century Catholic monk and scholar Bede produced an influential treatise that included a discussion of the spherical nature of the world. This work, The Reckoning of Time, was copied and distributed to clerics across the Carolingian Empire. Later in the 1300s,
I love what Simon says. Empire. But yeah, the sphericity of the Earth was not necessarily as much of a contention in like Catholicism and Christianity, that the Earth being round. It was much more about like heliocentrism, because they believed in geocentrism. They believed that the Earth, the Christian kind of belief, especially coming out of the Middle Ages, was the Earth was the center of like the universe and everything goes around because God kind of created it that way. That's why you get Galileo in such big trouble when he was saying no, it's the opposite. So the spherical nature of the Earth was not as much of like a controversy, and it was fine to be able to put that into Christian beliefs in the Middle Ages.
Alighieri's Divine Comedy also describes the Earth as a sphere, and again, nobody seemed to have a problem with this. The Catholics and later other branches of Christianity weren't the only religious sects that seemed to have its clergy and scholars almost universally think that the world was spherical. The Islamic world also concurred, as historian Jeffrey Burton Russell sums up, with extraordinarily few exceptions, no educated person in the history of Western civilization from the 3rd century BC onward believed that the Earth was flat.
Now, I mean, okay, in Western civilization, I was gonna say, because like there's cultures and stuff that might believe in that the Earth was flat and stuff like that. But yes, if you're talking about like mainstream Western civilizations, I mean, that's probably what you're talking about. It doesn't necessarily have to be Western. Like I said, the Islamic world were, especially in the Middle Ages, were like on the cutting edge of mathematics and geometry and geography, as they were incredible traders and travelers. Many of the great world civilizations, for sure.
Beyond the academics of the Western world, even the most empty-headed sailor knew the Earth was spherical simply by the fact that ships disappear over the horizon with the bottom first and then the mast the last to be sighted.
That's an interesting one. I would want to hear the kind of rebuttal for that, because when it comes down to, if we're going to talk about flat Earth and stuff and trying to like to prove the shape of the Earth with like simple tests, right? I know a lot of this mathematics and there's trigonometry and all this stuff that can be involved with measuring, like you're saying, with the sun and all that. That can be difficult to do, but what's something like you don't even need science for, right? So the fact that ships disappear from bottom up, that you can see if you got binoculars and stuff like that, how is that going to be rebutted? You know what I mean? Would they say it doesn't happen if you're a flat Earth believer, or would they say that it's like an optical illusion or something? Let me know. There's a bunch of stuff I'm going to want to hear from you all down in the comments, as I'm trying to learn about this.
A similar effect is observed when spotting land from a ship. It really doesn't take a rocket surgeon to realize that the sea's surface must curve continually. Despite this, there really still is a tiny percentage of the world's population who believe that the world is flat.
Now, my question is going to be, has that always been the case, that there's been a fringe group, or is it more recent? That's what I want to know, a little bit more about the history of flat Earth conspiracy.
You might at this point be wondering just how many. While internet comment threads make it seem as if the percentage is large, the reality is probably drastically less. I mean, comment trolls are going to troll. Look below for examples. As for some numbers, according to a 2018 poll run by the massive market research firm YouGov, the 8,215 responses, which were chosen to have a high probability of accurately representing the wider adult populace, showed 84% of respondents said they have always believed the world is round. 5% stated, I always thought the world is round, but more recently I am skeptical/have doubts. 2% stated, I have always thought the world is flat, but more recently I am skeptical/have doubts.
Wow, so the opposite?
And 2% went with, I have always believed the world is flat. The remaining 7% stated, other or not sure.
So some of the questions I have about some of these groups that are going to be, are going to be here. So the 5% that says, I always thought the earth is round, but more recently I am skeptical. I would think that's probably pretty recent. I mean, it'd be pretty recent. I mean, the democratization of information on places like YouTube and Google and stuff like that make it very easy to put out things and not necessarily have to have them go through the filter of being fact checked or something like that. You know what I mean? There's so much information out there that, yeah, people are going to view stuff and in these very good videos that are going to present something in a certain way and be very believable. But I think the more interesting statistic I'm looking at here is this 2% that states, I always thought the world was flat, but more recently I'm skeptical or have doubts. I'm interested to know the background of that 2%. Because, I mean, let's be honest, when you were a little kid, you were taught about the earth being round, you had a globe in your class and all that stuff. I wonder with those people, I would think that they were raised to probably raised to believe that, like their parents may have been flat earthers. That's what I'm wondering. What do you think about that?
While the good people at YouGov certainly know their stuff with respect to getting accurate data that represents the wider populace, we were curious as to what a larger sample of our own audience would reveal, though with the caveat that a general internet poll can sometimes be notoriously inaccurate. But for the curious and for whatever it's worth, our poll asking more or less the same questions received over 72,000 votes. So, what were the results?
Okay.
Well, approximately here we go. 96% of respondents stated that they firmly believe the world is round. 1% went with, I used to firmly believe the world is round, but now have doubts. 1% voted for, I firmly believe the world is flat. 0% stated, I used to firmly believe the world is flat, but now I have doubts. 1% noted, I am not sure what I believe on this issue.
Here's what I would think would happen too. This video would come out, right? This video comes out about it, and it's probably going to be in the feed of flat earthers, like recommended videos and stuff like that. Doing this poll, I bet would be very different before he posts this video versus after. And what I mean by that, I believe like the way he did it, doing it before, might give a more accurate, I think, reading, because this would probably draw a lot of attention again from flat earthers that probably don't even know about this channel or didn't even know that this was happening. And then after having viewed the video, then if they see a poll about it, they're going to be drawn to it and want to actually participate in the poll. So it'd be interesting to see after this video has been posted poll. I bet the statistics will go higher for flat earth believers.
These numbers seem surprisingly reasonable for an online poll when comparing to something a little more rigorously implemented like the YouGov poll. While our numbers skew more towards round earthers, this is perhaps to be expected given we know definitively that our audience skews towards being much more educated than the general populace. Good for you guys. Ooh. And just because we were curious about the many, many online trolls...
yeah, maybe. I mean, just because... Who's watching science videos and history videos and stuff like that? A lot of that is the people that have been exposed to that a lot. I mean, I don't know what to say with that, but yeah, kind of interesting.
As stated, it's our pet hypothesis, actually making it seem like there are a lot more flat earthers than there actually are. We did a follow-up poll which got 54,000 votes. For whatever it's worth, in this one, approximately 9% of respondents stated, I believe the world is round, but sometimes say online it's flat. 2% stated, I believe the world is flat, and advocate this position online. The remaining 89% stated,
it's not the
neither
same
applies to me. And yes, we know these numbers don't add up to exactly 100% in either case, but YouTube's polling system rounds to the nearest whole number, so well, here we are.
It wasn't exactly the same.
Okay, so with those numbers out of the way, this finally brings us to who started the relatively modern flat Earth movement and how on God's oblate spheroid Earth this movement is actually growing in an era where nearly all human knowledge is almost literally at everyone's fingertips.
All right, so I could tell Simon is approaching this with like, again, I can't believe people believe this kind of thing rather than, coming at it from a more objective position or something like that, and whatever.
The genesis of the modern flat Earth society started in the mid-19th century thanks to one Samuel Rowbotham of London, England. Dropping out of school at the tender age of 9, Rowbotham would eventually become convinced, or at least claimed he was, that not only was the Earth flat, but that everything we see in the heavens is actually only a few thousand miles from the Earth, stars and all.
That context is interesting. 1800s in London, was he somebody, because things that come back to historically in my mind, it depends a lot about what part of the 1800s, but you're talking Industrial Revolution. Is this a kid that came from a poor family and had to join the workforce at the age of 9, like so many child laborers had to do, and therefore wasn't exposed to a lot of the science or anything like that that might come from the geometry of the Earth? I wonder that context. I'd like to know about his background coming into that. But does it also mean that this what's his name? Robotham? That we said. Did he, or does him not having go through like the educational system make his view more, or his background, like his approach, more valid because he doesn't have that, like, I don't want to say indoctrination, but you know what I mean, like being taught early on and that settling when you're in your formative years? I have to look at that and think about that a little more. So anyway, I'm sure a lot of you guys know a lot more about that. You can let me know down below the history of this guy, Robotham.
While his ideas were absurd for an incredible number of reasons, even given the technology and scientific knowledge of his era, what Rowbotham had going for him was that he was reportedly incredibly quick on his feet in debates and an extremely charismatic speaker, able to twist the words of even the best academics.
When it comes to conspiracies, you have to be charismatic, or I feel like they're not going to change their beliefs. You have to have a good way to deliver. I found that with a lot of things. Just great getting people to believe in things that are outside of their own beliefs requires that. We see it all over in history, right? Go to dictators in history. They weren't just books and theory people. They were people that could invoke emotion. And the best way to do that is, in person and with speeches and stuff like that. So, that's just a part of psychology.
Actually matter if he was right or not, only that he was better at convincing lay people than the academics he regularly debated, or at least good at creating reasonable doubt. As noted by a contemporary article published in the Leeds Times, one thing he did demonstrate was that scientific dabblers unused to platform advocacy are unable to cope with a man, a charlatan, if you will, but clever and thoroughly up in his theory, thoroughly alive to the weakness of his opponents. As well as making a small fortune from public speaking.
And by the way, I'll come to anything. I feel all knowledge is proportionate to the evidence that supports it. Like, I'm gonna go in, if I'm gonna look at more of these conspiracy things and try to look at the history of them, again, like I do as somebody who deals with history for a living, like I'm gonna come to it, the approach that, hey, if there's good evidence to change somebody's mind, like to change my mind or something, like I'm gonna look at it. You know what I mean? We have to. That's honesty. We don't want to live in echo chambers and stuff. But again, I kind of believe that idea that that which can be that which can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. So we can hear all this stuff and this Robotham guy, but like you have to have evidence back to it. So it looks like he wrote a book. Any of you guys read this and talked about it? Are there actual good ideas there? Zetetic Astronomy, Earth Not a Globe. Robotham
also wrote various works, including a book aptly titled Earth Not a Globe. Robotham ultimately created the Zetetic Society, which, besides advocating for a flat Earth, also advocated that only facts that one could prove true themselves could be accepted as true. On the side, Robotham made a bit of extra money by going as
That can be problematic in a way, because if you're talking about something say like the Earth, you know, the way that you could confirm if you're trying to debunk a model for the Earth that's so large that, you know, like why doesn't it look round when you're standing on the Earth, like something that big? That can be hard because some things you can't confirm just with your senses. You can't. There has to be other things, right? Because senses can be skewed and they have their limitations. You have to have multiple forms of things and then see where those things lead to. So that can be a little bit problem with this zetetic approach. With that is it can only take you so far, and oftentimes can't be confirmation.
Samuel Berlian's making money by selling cure-alls and life extenders of his own invention. While by the early 20th century, the society started to gradually faded into even more obscurity than it already was at its peak during Rowbotham's lifetime,
so it went away.
All was not lost. The truth, it cannot be killed so easily, apparently. In 1956, when mankind was on the verge of putting a satellite in orbit, Samuel Shenton of Dover in the UK came across the former works of the Universal Zetetic Society, the successor to Rowbotham's, and he was hooked. He then established the International Flat Earth Research Society, or IFERS.
Okay, so I think about this. So, okay, so people, the history here, like the timeline, shouldn't say people believe the Earth is flat, right? And have since the BC era, generally speaking, especially amongst larger societies. And then you have this guy, and I wonder again. I got to learn more about the Rowbotham guy because he's kind of becoming interesting to me now to think about it. About why did he do this? Like, was he was mentioning something about the guy? Was it him being a con man or something like that? Was that what this was about, to sell books and stuff like that? But regardless, it looked like that a movement didn't really take place after him. Went dormant for, they're saying, up to the 50s, 60s now. They're talking about Sputnik, so we're getting to the space race after World War II. So we have this like dormant period and then resurrects itself. That's the history.
This adopted some of the ideas of the Zetetic Society before it, most notably, as you might have guessed from their new name, that the Earth was flat. Of course, this timing wasn't exactly ideal given the launch of Sputnik in 1957, which, beyond being in orbit, put out a signal that anyone with a little know-how could track, very clearly demonstrating the spherical nature of the Earth.
Well, even without that, I guess you could have said, you know, the Sputnik didn't need to exist on a round Earth, or, you know, in that, because I mean it makes it a lot more plausible. But couldn't there be some other alternate theory of it? It's maybe it never existed, or like it's not in space, or could it, you know, it probably depends on if you feel the flat Earth there's outer space or not, that kind of thing. I'm sure there was a reason for that. You can just, you know, claim fake.
This didn't faze him in the slightest, however. He simply noted that satellites circled over the disk of the world, and that would sailing round the Isle of Wight prove that it was spherical. It is just the same for those satellites.
Now, sure, if you calculate more about its speed, you would find the distance is, you know, very high. And again, I don't know exactly if flat earthers have a belief about it, you know, how high does the sky go? You know what I mean? But yeah, probably grounded. But I would think if you did more measurements, you would see that it is, you know, not it's you know, going down over the horizon too, potentially, or something like that. Like, notice that it's going around something round and not something flat. But probably just from just like layman's experience, you could probably just again just wave it off, be like, oh yeah, it's up there, but it's just going really fast and around a, you said disk Earth?
Pictures of the Earth were taken from space, clearly showing the planet's spherical nature. The man who strongly advocated trusting what you can see with your own eyes stated, it's easy to see how a photograph like that could fool the untrained eye. When astronauts came back still believing the Earth wasn't flat, he went with the catch-all explanation for any conspiracy theory when no other suitable explanation can be thought up.
So denied those pictures. I've seen those early black and white pictures of the first shots taken of in space, and there's definitely some with curved features, but it looks like the guy, at least from this society, didn't really have a good answer for that, right? Just, it can mislead you. But that's interesting because it also said that, like, you have to believe everything with what you see, right? But so it's like, okay, you can confirm with your senses, like what you see, but now that you can see something, now your senses can fool you, but they didn't fool you before? Or is it the fact that it's like a photograph? And what, it can be edited, I guess? Is that what maybe they're saying?
Stated, it's a deception of the public and it isn't right. Despite the giant, roughly spherical mound of evidence staring the members right in the face, including
they're intentionally trying to show that the Earth is round when it's flat. So that would mean there has to be a motive if you're going to use that. And I'd be interested to hear what they believe the motive would be. And again, hopefully some historical precedents I can comment on.
Easily confirmed by anyone with a modicum of knowledge in physics, the society did not die completely, though by 1972 had dropped from a peak of about 3,000 members down to around 100 spanning the globe. That same year, Shenzhen died, and Californian Charles Johnson more or less took over the remnants, creating the International Flat Earth Research Society of America. Johnson also advocated that there was a global conspiracy with regards to the flat Earth, not just today, but spanning millennia. To quote him, this was a conspiracy that Moses, Columbus, and FDR all fought against. Beyond that, Columbus most definitely thought the Earth was spherical, simply misjudging its circumference.
And I remember hearing that. I don't remember where I'd heard that as a kid, like that they thought the Earth was flat and that Columbus confirmed that. I don't know where that came from. I feel like I was never taught that, but I just believed that or something like that when I was young, or at least heard about it. I did not hear that the whole thing about Columbus thinking the Earth was a lot smaller than it was until much later, until I was like a history student, honestly, and like in college and stuff like that. I just thought he just wanted to go west, and thought he could get there in time. But no, he thought the Earth was way smaller and you could very easily sail west to get to Asia. But yeah, I don't know. Do you remember at all ever hearing like in a formal setting that in that Columbus era, people thought the Earth was flat? Or is that just something talked about in society? You know what I mean?
Guessing Moses didn't have to fight anyone on this one, as the ancient Egyptians firmly believed in the concept of a flat Earth, as did seemingly the Hebrews around the time he supposedly lived. So what exactly do the world's governments and countless scientists
from
in high school physics...
That, like early, Hebrews and Egyptians did that. I think isn't there like Jewish scripture basically talking that the Earth is flat, or maybe in a vague term? But again, those are gonna predate the findings of Eratosthenes, which come after that.
Students throughout human history have to gain by convincing people the world is spherical instead of flat. Well, Johnson advocated that this is a tool used by scientists to get rid of religion. Of course, as noted, Christian scholars throughout history, on the whole, have advocated for the very spherical Earth, and we're not aware of any major religious denomination the world over today that goes with the flat Earth model.
That makes, he's going to get into it more, but yeah, tying religion into it could very much be a useful way for people to not believe something if they believe very wholeheartedly in religious beliefs. And if you can tie a conspiracy to religious beliefs, because religious beliefs are some of the most core foundational things we have to our entire personalities, because it completely shapes our worldview and purpose and stuff like that. It seems like that would be the best way to get a conspiracy taught, is it to tie it to people with deep religious foundations. But again, I don't know. Does that mean that were all those people that they've talked about at this point all deeply religious, or were they people that truly thought just on its own that scientifically that the Earth is flat, regardless of there's a God or religious beliefs? You know what I mean? I wonder, or is the majority definitely going to be very devout religious people? I would think it would be more devout, probably even today too. Even more so, I don't know.
So apparently there is no conflict. But hey, we guess Eratosthenes must have really had it in for those ancient Egyptian and Greek gods. In any event, despite Johnson's less than compelling arguments, over time this new society actually gained followers, up to a peak of about 3,500 members under his leadership. Disaster struck, however, when a fire at headquarters destroyed some of the records of membership in 1997. Ultimately, Johnson himself passed away in 2001, and the society was temporarily just as dead. All was not lost, however, as there is no medium greater than the internet at giving humans the ability to discover the truth in anything for themselves.
Internet,
if we weren't all lazy and our monkey brains were not chock full of cognitive biases. And so it was that in 2004, one Daniel Shenton created a discussion forum home for the mostly dead Flat Earth Society, and by 2009, a new wiki website was created in its place, with the society slowly growing from there to apparently around 500 members to date. There are also many Flat Earth pages and channels on sites like Facebook, Twitter, and indeed YouTube that sometimes exceed 100,000 members or subscribers of a given page, channel, or profile, for whatever that's worth. In the latest incarnation of the society,
so it's got to be bigger now than it ever has been, right? Before, you know, the scientific observations that were happening.
Their forebears, the modern group strongly advocates for only accepting that which you can see with your own eyes and prove with your own efforts. As they note on their website, the simplest is by relying on one's own senses to discern the true nature of the world around us. The world looks flat, the bottom of clouds are flat, the movement of the sun. These are all examples of your senses telling you that we do not live in a spherical, heliocentric world.
That's interesting because if you're just talking about the senses, like the sun doesn't look like it just goes away and like shrinks. You know, when things go away, they shrink into eventually being out of your sight, right? Because like kind of like ships we were talking about, like with the sun, it stays basically the same size all day, right? And then when it sets, it goes down, right? It goes down, and without it shrinking really in size, it just gets cut off like a boat going over a horizon. So like, aren't your senses that way telling you that that the Earth isn't necessarily flat? Or I guess you could say the Earth is flat. The sun's just like, I mean, I guess it depends on the model. Because now I'm thinking the sun can go around a flat Earth, like over the flat Earth and like under the flat Earth. But that would mess up the whole, like, is it going spherically above a flat plane? I guess it would depend on the model. But again, it doesn't. The sun and the way it moves doesn't at least show me in my senses that it is like it has anything to do with it being flat. It doesn't confirm it's flat. Unless there's another perspective I'm not thinking of. Let me know.
This is what's called using an empirical approach, or an approach that relies on information from your senses. Alternatively, when using Descartes' method of Cartesian doubt to skeptically view the world around us, one quickly finds that the notion of a spherical world is the theory which has the burden of proof and not flat Earth theory.
Okay, I mean, the burden of proof is to whoever is making a claim. Right. So if you're saying the Earth is round, you have a burden of proof. If you are saying the Earth is flat, you have a burden of proof, don't you? Or you have to just say, or otherwise you just have to say, I'm not convinced it's round. If you say the default is flat, that doesn't work. That is a positive claim. You're gonna have to have evidence for that. Okay. And the best way to do that, I guess, would be to because we do this in science, we want to, it's not necessarily about proving something, it's about disproving other things. And that makes it stronger.
As for the model of the Earth they go with, while there is some dissension among the ranks over exact details, the current belief advocated by the Flat Earth Society is that the Earth is disc-shaped. The North Pole lies at the center of this disc, and there is an ice wall surrounding the outermost parts of the Earth that keep the oceans contained. This wall...
So, Earth round, ice wall around the outside. And is that what, like, Antarctica is supposed to be? It's like the rim, but it's keeping the ocean in. So if you were to crack open the wall, this wall, like all the water would escape or something.
Wall is nearly impossible to reach.
Is there? I mean, again, if you're making that claim, there's evidence. There's got to be evidence, right? Is there evidence of a 360-degree ice wall, or is it just like just a guess?
To the fact that NASA is closely guarding it, ensuring that no one ever gets close enough to see it for themselves. NASA also is extremely active in generating satellite photos of the Earth and generating other data, all meant to keep people believing in a spherical Earth.
So
seemingly, the Google Earth team must also be in on it too, clearly abandoning the company's long-held unofficial mantra of "Don't be evil."
Well, stuff predates NASA for sure, and there are a lot of other organizations outside of NASA. As well, but again, to what end? Is it simply hiding or to hurt religion, to hide God? Is that what saying NASA and international organizations are doing? It's to hide God for some reason.
As evidence of this conspiracy and how far-reaching it is, they also point out on their website that the United Nations emblem strongly resembles the Flat Earth Society's view of what the Earth actually looks like. We guess clearly showing the logo design team, led by industrial designer Oliver Lincoln Lundquist in 1945, didn't get the memo that the true shape of the Earth was supposed to be a secret.
Man, you know what that's going to screw up, though, if you look at the emblem there, is distances in the southern hemisphere. Like in the north, I guess that's not going to be a very big deal in the northern hemisphere, but in the south, that's going to screw things up big time, isn't it? Like, clearly, wouldn't that really screw up? Like, the Pacific is going to be like, what, 3 times bigger? And the distance from like Africa or Africa, South America, and Australia, those distances. Like, can you still believe in this model for flat Earth and believe what we believe the current distances are, or are the distances different? But then that brings in like the mileage of roads or like plane distances. How do you overcome that?
To be fair, when his team originally designed it, it was originally just supposed to be used on the badges at the United Nations Charter Signing Conference, so only for people who already knew that the Earth was flat. Fun fact though, Lundquist did, however, make up for the scrub later by designing the classic blue and white Q-tip box. In any event, you might at this point be wondering how the Flat Earth Society believes commercial airlines and ships the world over continue to seemingly travel in one direction and manage to circle the globe. Well, this is because these ships and planes are literally circling. They state, circumnavigation is performed by moving in a great circle around the North Pole. As for how the ship and plane captains don't seem to be aware of this, in modern times it's because GPS devices and autopilots are designed.
Wait, so if you're flying on a direct flight from Johannesburg to Sydney, Australia, are you turning the whole time? Is that what they're saying they're doing? Are you turning, or are you going straight? Now, if you're going straight, that would mean you would get way closer to like the equator and stuff, and probably start seeing on a direct flight. Would you be seeing India or something like that? I'm trying to think of the map of how that would work. Yeah, I'd have to learn more about that.
Designed so the software makes it look like the craft is circling a globe and not continually turning slightly. Of course, it's not clear how they account for people tricking themselves when navigating
airline industries
without GPS, which has only been ubiquitous for a couple of decades or so. You can see our video, Who Invented GPS and How Does It Work, for more on that. This is a particularly...
How does GPS work? Wait, is GPS fake? Or are there actually satellites above the flat Earth that are bouncing off the global positioning? Or is it fake? Fake, and there's some other system of like what? Radio towers or something? I don't know. Like how
important consideration in planes, where weight and balance is always an essential consideration if one doesn't want to die a fiery death. Thus, if they were really traveling in the way that flat earthers claim, the fuel requirements would be different, sometimes vastly so. No surprise here, big oil must of course be involved in covering that one up. As for, the whole day and night thing, this is explained on their website as such. The sun moves in circles around the North Pole. When it is over your head,
yeah, I was saying earlier, if like the sun goes over the flat Earth and under it, that couldn't happen. There's no way that could happen even on a flat Earth, because it would daylight and like how we record daylight and how we experience daylight on the planet wouldn't work for that if it goes over. It'd have to be around in a circle. Even that's going to have problems though. But it goes in circles around the North Pole.
It's night. The light of the sun is confined to a limited area, and its light acts as a spotlight upon the Earth. The apparent effect of the sun rising and setting is a perspective effect. How exactly?
Spotlight meaning it only generally reflects down, and that's why you can't see it all the time, because the sunlight is just focused down, or it just dissipates.
The light from the sun only works.
Sorry, I'm going through all the questions in my head. I hope that's not annoying to you guys.
Phases of the moon and lunar and solar eclipses work, given this spotlight model, and given they believe the sun is always above the Earth. Moving on, as for the many who claim to be able to see the curvature of the Earth when on high-altitude commercial flights, well, the Flat Earth Society, who advocated trusting your own senses over what anyone tells you, tells these people to, quote, "Quite simply, you cannot. The windows on commercial aircraft are small and heavily curved. Even if they flew high enough for a person to see curvature, it would still not be visible to passengers."
Not if the Earth was round. Saying because plane windows are curved that it's gonna make it look curved, but they curve in a dimension. Windows don't curve from left to right. It would distort everything. So is that a cop out though? Is that just a cop out of saying that? Now I don't know exactly what height you need to be to see out of like a plane window. An airplane window. Also, windows aren't very wide. You have to have, in a plane flight, even at like 30,000 feet, you're going to need a pretty wide view, and that might be hard to do. And then our eyes being perceptive the way they are. Do pilots see that? Because they have a much wider view, or maybe their software and their navigation equipment can pick that up or something. I don't know. How high would you need to be if you believe, or if the Earth was the size that we say it is and curved the way it is? How high would you have to be in having a whole field of view of 180 degrees or whatever to be able to see left to right curvature?
As for the issue of someone with even a halfway decent telescope being able to see the spherical nature of other planets in the solar system, including them spinning away, the Flat Earth Society claims planets are orbiting astronomical objects. The Earth is not a planet by definition, as it sits at the center of our solar system above which the planets and the sun revolve. The Earth's uniqueness, fundamental differences, and centrality makes any comparison to other nearby celestial bodies insufficient, like comparing basketballs to the court on which they bounce.
Earth's uniqueness, fundamental differences, and centrality makes any comparison to other celestial bodies insufficient. So is that they're saying that the way the Earth is doesn't necessarily mean what like other planets are going to be. The Earth could be a flat thing, but planets could still be round. I mean, yeah, technically.
As for how gravity works in the flat Earth
if you
model,
dismiss
the
a
Earth
lot
is
of other
constantly
things,
accelerating at a rate of 32 feet per second squared, or 9.8 meters per second squared. This constant acceleration causes what you think of as gravity. Imagine sitting in a car that never stops speeding up. You will be forever pushed into your seat. The Earth works much the same way. It is constantly accelerating upwards, being pushed by a universal accelerator, a UA, known as dark energy or etheric wind.
Wait. Okay, so you have the Earth. It's flat. Okay, it's flat. This is the Earth, but you know what I mean. The Earth is accelerating up, and because of that, we're being pushed. The Earth is accelerating up, and we're getting pushed down. The Earth it's going up at 9.8 meters per second squared, the gravitational constant or whatever. Whoa. What? What? That's what gravity is? We're being pushed up? Whoa. Is that just something pulled out of someone's butt? Or like testable?
A problem with this explanation, given the whole issue of eventually exceeding the speed of light. In fact, if constant acceleration...
Yeah, it can't be at 9.8 meters per second squared, because that is... The squared means it's getting faster and faster and faster. So it couldn't be that. It could be 9.8 meters per second squared. That's impossible. Because that's like exponential. At a constant 9.8 meters per second, but that's not how stuff falls. We see a increase in velocity until terminal velocity. How do you back that up?
9.8 meters per second squared happens, right. It would only take about a year for the Earth to reach the speed of light. Well, they've got that covered too, explaining, due to special relativity, this is not the case. At this point, many readers will question the validity of any answer which uses advanced, intimidating-sounding physics terms to explain a position. However, it is true, the relevance equation is V over C equals tan H AT over C. One will find that in this equation, tan H AT over C can never exceed or equal 1. This means that velocity can never reach the speed of light flight regardless of how long one accelerates for and the rate of the acceleration.
All right. Really? Picard. You can never fully achieve the speed of light. There is supposed to be like a cosmic speed limit. But we would have pushed that eventually. And now we're at that? Are we at that right now? That terminal velocity, whatever you want to call it? What I heard from that is just trust me, bro.
Anyway, as to what lies below the Earth, this is heavily disputed among flat earthers, but it doesn't really matter as you can't get there anyway. You see, to quote flat earther Robbie Davidson in an interview with Forbes, "We don't believe anything can fall off the edge because a big portion of the flat Earth community believes that we're in a dome, like a snow globe, so the sun, moon, and stars are all inside. It's just very high, but all contained inside. So there's actually no way to fall off of the Earth."
A dome? So there's a dome. Why? It was just created that way? Is that just that's just how it was created? There's a dome, so you can't fall off the Earth. Now we have proof of that? There's a proof of it. Is there proof of a dome? Like going to the edge of it or shooting up something that high? Is there evidence, or is it just like again another just conjecture, assertion?
Given it takes only a modicum of effort to disprove pretty much everything said on their website and prove definitively for oneself that the Earth is roughly spherical without needing to trust any scientists or governments, you might think that flat earthers just aren't trying. Well, you're kind of right, but there are exceptions. Case in point, limo driver Mike Hughes, who managed to raise about $8,000 thanks to a flat Earth fundraiser. Why? Well, it's to build a rocket to reach the heavens to once and for all prove that the Earth was flat. Reportedly, the final hilariously fitting steam-powered rocket and launch platform cost around $20,000 and took 10 years to build. With it, Hughes managed to achieve an altitude of almost 1,900 feet, which, while kind of impressive for an amateur-built homemade rocket that could carry a human, was nonetheless not able to achieve his objective of getting him to space. It's not even close. No. If only it was possible to build more powerful rockets, or if there existed a balloon designed to be able to soar into the heavens with some sort of device on board that could capture and store what it sees, like an eye. Or, stick with us here, people, if a human going along for the ride was a requirement to show NASA hadn't tampered with this futuristic visual capture device, some sort of bird-like machine that could carry humans above 1,500 feet. On that note, for a mere $12,000 to $16,000, Hughes could have purchased a charter flight ticket to not only take him higher than altitudes of 1,900 feet, but also take him to Antarctica to see the massive ice wall for himself. Or if the flat Earth...
Aren't there way better uses of money to prove a flat Earth than that? How much does it cost to get on like one of those like rockets that go way up that they like Jeff Bezos does? Where's that? Would that be part of the conspiracy? Or again, yeah, make an expedition to the South Pole. Got to be a way you can get there. It's the circumference of the Earth.
Society wanted to pool together their resources for prices of about $25,000 to $70,000. They could charter a flight to the South Pole itself.
You can go to the South
Pole. So a thing they don't tell you
on the Antarctica. Wait, so those people that say they've been to the South Pole, they're lying? Okay. Every time I learn something here, I'm asking more questions. And again, I'm trying to go back into history and see, like, have these questions have been answered historically? It seems like they have repeatedly, but I'm still just thinking about it.
Package brochure is that while you can go visit the South Pole, NASA subjects everyone that does to severe mental retraining to ensure all memories of the ice wall have been erased and replaced with pleasant but very wall-free recollections. All joking and head-scratching aside, it's always important to note that many of the core psychological quirks that see flat earthers intractably convinced that the Earth is flat in the face of all the evidence to the contrary exist in all of us. Monkey brain is going to monkey brain. We further all have many beliefs we firmly cling to, just as tenuously supported by our level of knowledge on a subject, though thankfully for most of us the absurdity isn't quite so easy to spot, allowing us to safely continue to think of ourselves as superior to mere mortals with alternate ideas. In the end, we all firmly believe many things that aren't true at all, and no amount of evidence could ever convince any of us to change our minds on some of these things. Food for thought indeed. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, please do give us a thumbs up below. Don't forget to subscribe. Please also check out Dollar Shave Club through the link in the description below. And as always, thank you for watching.
Awesome. All right, we're going to wrap this up. I'll give you my final thoughts. Maybe next time. All right, so I was able to learn a lot about what I was hoping to get into. This was the history of it. Again, that's my channel. I talk about history. I do history commentary and stuff like that. But yeah, looking at some of the historically relevant things there, and a lot of them were interesting. And then it started to get me interested in hearing all these explanations and kind of turning away from, again, what's the historical precedent for all this stuff, but then like the beliefs. And again, every time I learn about something that that there's this belief, that then it would just bring to me more and more questions. Now, I would assume that a lot of these things that he was saying, probably not all flat earthers probably believe. I would think there's maybe a lot more like variety in those thoughts. And you can let me know. I guarantee if you're watching this, the people watching this, if you've made it this long, you're probably somebody that has looked into flat earth a lot more. And again, I have so many questions with that. But again, I'm trying to focus on like the historical relevance of it. But it is interesting to me to see this, especially something that goes so deep in history with how people have viewed the cosmology of the solar system and the universe. It's fascinating to me to look at that. But again, it gave me so many other questions. Now, if you don't want me to continue to look and go in this, I could totally see this being a rabbit hole and start actually looking at the claims rather than the history of flat earth. Let me know down below. And I'm sure just by seeing the views of this video, that'll let me know. But yeah, if there's other stuff I should be checking out, let me know. And it gets me a little bit off of what I do on this channel, which is history related content. But like, if you guys are interested in hearing my opinion or watching me learn about this, I'm down to keep doing that as well. So, all right. Anyway, good job with Simon there. He was being very snarky about it, I would say. I'm sure, I haven't looked at the comments on this video. I would think there's plenty of backlash against it. And maybe I'll get some too. Maybe there's going to be flat earthers or something down below commenting on stuff. I don't know if they get real personal. I promise it's not personal. I'm just learning here. I'm not judging anybody at all. I thought it very fascinating. So anyway, with that, this was fun to check out. And again, the original video link is down below. You can support Simon's channel over there. And again, hit the sub button if you liked what we're doing here, and I'll try to get more content like this. All right, with that, we'll see you next time. Bye.